Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University. Today's guest on Better Than I Found It is former Georgia Tech golfer Chris Petefish. Chris is a player I remember very well during his years at Georgia Tech playing for Hall of Fame coach Bruce Hepler. We talk about everything from being recruited to Georgia Tech initially, to his time at Georgia Tech, to a couple of really exciting ACC championship bouts where the Yellow Jackets came out on top. He also talks about turning professional and how his life has been as a professional golfer. One of the things we definitely go over is strokes gained data, how to use it, what some of the common mistakes are that people make, how important it is to enter the data correctly, just all sorts of things that would help a young player, would help a young coach make sense of strokes gained data. Currently, he's getting ready to go to PGA Tour America's Q School up in Canada, but has played 3 years on the Korn Ferry Tour. Great guy, really smart, very articulate, and a self-admitted strokes gained nerd. But a great guy, Chris Petefish. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Okay, Better Than I Found It, listeners. It's time to welcome former Georgia Tech golfer Chris Petefish to the podcast. Really nice to have you join me. Chris, I hadn't seen you since you were in college.
I know, it's been a long time. Thanks, Coach, for having me.
Yeah, this is great. I've got a lot I want to cover today. Everything from how Bruce Hepler got you to Atlanta, Georgia to begin with, your time there as a Yellow Jacket, professional golf, which you're still a part of right now, and finally discuss an initiative that your family has had for some time about golf statistics, which I think is a very confusing part of the industry these days for people. I want you to make sense of that for me. But before we get into all of those subjects, I always like to find out whether it's a player or a coach, and just how did you get your start? You know, when you were growing up, who was the biggest influence, and like, how did you get your start in the game?
Yeah, it's a good question. It was joint. Both of my parents got me involved at the same time. I was 7 years old, and it was just the age where I was trying every single sport to see which one I liked the most, as most kids do. And I really enjoyed baseball and golf equally. And I did both those for a few years before solely just focusing on golf around 9 or 10 years old. But I mean, the first time I picked up a club, I just got obsessed with it and just, I mean, I wasn't good at it, but as all of us were picking up a club, and some people have more natural talent than others. But I loved the idea of self-improvement and how good can I get at this game. And I just, I'd love to go out and practice. So that's when I knew this might be for me.
Are you, say it again?
I just feel like I knew that was
This
golf
might
was
be
for
for
me,
me.
and this might be for me, just how much I love being outdoors
Are
and
you still
playing.
obsessed?
I am, yeah. I mean, it's definitely slightly different when it's a job versus when you're playing as a kid, but you definitely have some of that same excitement and love for it, or else you wouldn't really want to do it.
I always tell young players that have to ask me, should they turn pro? Don't. If
Yeah.
if you don't love the game enough to have, if you have to ask the question, I would not turn pro. And if you don't love the game, you're not going to survive the storms that are coming your way. It's just not going to happen. So it sounds like to me you still love the game. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And you've added to the game. You've added Leo and Sprinkles, and you've added a wonderful wife. So Emily, you've got some other things going on in your life other than just you, the selfish golfer, right?
I do, yeah. No, it's been really good. Got married almost a year ago. Be the 30th of June, be a first year anniversary. So that's been incredible blessing. And then, yeah, my parents have two dogs that are great. We're off with our own home now, so I don't see them as much as I'd like. But yeah, no, life's great.
That's awesome. Well, you talked about your influences being your parents on that, and obviously in your junior golf growing up, obviously you became a really good player. Didn't take too long, but you were in the class of 2014. I remember that graduating class very well. Scotty Scheffler, Will Zalatoris, Connor Black from Houston, and I was recruiting all those boys. That's a pretty hefty class. How in the world did Bruce Hepler sift through all that and get to you? And how did he get you to go to Atlanta, Georgia? How did you do that?
Yeah, I want to say like somewhere between my freshman and sophomore summer is really when I think I took off as a junior player. I was always pretty solid, but then I had a lot of success in like AJGA tournaments, invitationals. I want to say I was in the final group of like the HP back then at Carlton Woods, and um, I think that was like when Jordan Spieth was playing, and a lot of really big names, Wyndham Clark, and I was in the mix with those guys. So definitely put my name on the map for colleges, and yeah, I guess there were a lot of I was blessed to have a lot of places to go play and choose from, and it was I think the big decision for me was like Stanford versus Georgia Tech at the time because Stanford was home, and obviously they have a great program as well. But I just knew the track record that Bruce had of producing professional players on the PGA Tour, as well as demanding academics and having a great degree and a great business school at Tech that I was very interested in at the time. And just I loved my time when I had a visit there in person, and it just kind of felt like God was leading me towards Georgia Tech, and just felt like the right decision for me.
Yeah, that's good. I've recruited a bunch through the years against Bruce, not so much at Baylor, but certainly when I was at Oklahoma State, I had to recruit against Bruce a bunch. And so it's interesting for me to always find out how players get them. But how did he get you a semester early? Because you showed up in January of what would have been your senior year in high school. How did that term is called gray shirt, where you come and to campus early, graduate early, and come to campus early. How was that for you? Were there inherent benefits to that? It's called a gray shirt. You come early, you don't get to compete.
Yeah, I didn't really even know about it until Bruce brought it up. And, I basically had to finish high school early. And, the benefits of going and getting used to tech was just that it was a big transition for me, moving from the West Coast to Atlanta. I have different grass types. I really didn't have a ton of experience with Bermuda grass. It was a lot of POA and rye out in Phoenix where I was at the time. And I just wanted to be able to give myself the best chance to hit the ground running and as well as be able to take a lot of classes because I knew I wasn't playing. I think I took 15 credits so that I was able to not take as many classes when I was going to play, and which was going to be able to allow me to practice more and be able to play more golf when I was able to compete starting in later in that fall. So, the gray shirt was it was definitely a harder transition than I thought, just because of, moving to Atlanta. It was a lot of new. I was a young kid, but it was really good for me to prepare for what I was going to expect in the fall. That would have been a lot to handle as an incoming freshman to hit the ground running. But the funny story is that I showed up there this was 2014 in January, and that first week was, I think they called it like the Armageddon of the ice storm or something. Like it was the most historic blizzard Atlanta's ever seen in 100 years or something. And it shut down everything. And that was my first 3 days of like there were people stranded in on the highways. They just abandoned their cars because people like you just couldn't drive. The city wasn't prepared. They didn't put any salt down. And so I thought, what have I done? Like what is this place? I had like two pairs of pants. I was coming from sunny Arizona. I'm like, I am not prepared for this, but it ended up being good and helped me in the long run.
I remember that storm. We actually had a little bit of sleet from that storm, but the real stuff hit you all. And I remember thinking, wow, that Bruce can't like that very much. But no, so you show up from sunny Arizona, you go to you thought you were at the North Pole, but
Yeah.
it didn't. It obviously was beneficial to you because when you came back that next fall, you'd already experienced college life, everything but traveling to tournaments with the team. So you already knew that. And you kind of hit the ground running that year as a freshman. You had the third best average on the team, which is pretty good when you're talking about being a freshman. You played at the NCAA, tied 53rd, and actually at Concession, which was one of the most difficult golf courses. Man, that was hard. But that was a great way to start your career. Honestly, it was.
It was, yeah. I honestly, looking back, it was probably my most consistent year. I want to say I didn't really finish outside the top 30 in any single golf tournament except for nationals, where I think I finished somewhere in the 50s, which was I felt like at the time as a freshman with not a lot of experience was decent. It was solid. There's more people play nationals than at most college tournaments, obviously, and but yeah, I think I didn't have a lot of top tens. I may have had one, but I pretty much finished between 15th and 30th in every single golf tournament, which is, I guess a good thing if from your third or fourth man, which is solid. So yeah, I definitely that gray shirt helped me a lot that freshman year.
Well, I can tell you, Bruce told me about that because that was the first time I'd ever heard of one. I didn't know about him. Um, and Bruce said, "You ought to try that, coach. It's a great idea to get a kid ready. The shock in August is not there for him anymore. So he's not really a freshman when he gets there on the team. And you obviously played pretty well, had a good year. And then following that year, you qualified for your first U.S. Amateur, which was at Olympia Fields. So I want you to tell me, I don't know what you shot. I didn't look that up, but I do
Yeah.
know that you played one of my favorite golf courses in the world. I just love going to Chicago and playing at Olympia Fields.
Yeah, there is a lot of good golf up there. I honestly don't remember what I shot. I want to say I missed match play. I know I missed match play. I think it wasn't by much, maybe two or three shots. And I just remember hitting the ball really well. I definitely struggled on greens that week. If I had a decent putter, I think I would have definitely made match play. But I want to say like my caddy bailed on me either right before the first round or the second round and like just never made it. And so Bruce actually went from spectator to on the bag for me like last minute, which was a funny
Really?
story.
He did.
Yeah. You
That's
strapped
great.
him up and yeah.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Bruce and I are part of the world's smallest fraternity.
Yeah,
Um,
what's that?
Bruce and I are both assistant coaches for Mike Holder at Oklahoma State, and so was Alan Bratton and Fred Warren, who ended up being at East Tennessee State. So Bruce and I have a long history going way back. I just didn't know he caddied for you at that USAM. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Uh, you were telling me before we recorded about that freshman year, something had happened at ACCs, right? Was that the year or not? What
It
happened at ACC
was.
your freshman year?
Yeah, it was obviously very much a group effort to win that title. So we won ACCs as a ACC championship as a team, which was an incredible experience. We had Ollie Snyder, Jins, Anders Albertson, Vince Whaley, James Clark, and I. And it was obviously a great team. Vince is on tour, always had a lot of success. So is Anders. And yeah, it was a really cool experience. It was getting down to the wire. And then I just remember I hit a tee shot like a million yards right on this last hole. It was a par five. I think it's called Old North State, and pretty awesome venue that they had for a long time. And yeah, I hit this drive a million yards right. I don't know how it wasn't OB. It was like in someone's yard, but somehow it wasn't OB. Hit like a five wood back in play, hit an 8 iron to I want to say 8, 10 feet, and then made that putt. I didn't know at the time, but actually we needed that putt because we ended up going to a playoff about 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, um, which was a cool, crazy thing because they'd send all five of us out to do this playoff, and then I ended up birdieing the playoff hole as well. We ended up winning by one or two, but that was a really cool memory. And there's definitely not a lot of there's individual pressure of trying to win a golf tournament. There's a whole nother level of pressure when you're trying to win something for your team.
I think that's well said, and it is true that people talk about, they professionals talk about the Ryder Cup being so much pressure because the country, they're playing for their country. When you're playing for the team and a team that's had such a great history at the ACCs like Georgia Tech has, that there must have been a lot of pressure. But you went on through, you played in that USAM later that summer. Then your sophomore year was also solid. I think you finished seventh at the ACCs. You had the second best average on the team. So your game is on a good path, like a normal, awesome, getting better every year path. But your junior year was not your best. In fact, it was your worst in college. Talk about what you think caused that and how you were able to come out of it because that summer following and then your senior year was your best.
It was, yeah. There's definitely a lot to talk about with that junior year, and it was one of those things like I had gotten better each year. I felt like my ball striking was pretty solid, and my putter had been the thing that kind of was holding me back or was inconsistent. And then my ball striking kind of went away junior year, and I just didn't have a lot to fall back on. Like the floor just kind of fell, underneath me, and I was playing some tournaments in the lineup, and kind of struggling really in that four, five, six range on the team, and ended up not making travel team, which honestly I agree with looking back because I just wasn't playing well enough. Like I just felt like other guys could have contributed more. And it was really the best thing for me. I really spent too much time my first couple of years looking at like, hey, what do I need to do to play on this team? And not enough time looking at myself and like, how do I get better at golf? And so I think part of it is maybe like, golf is such an individual sport. I'm also an only child. So I really like, I had spent a lot of time just trying to be a better version of myself for so long. And then when you get to college and you have this atmosphere of all these teammates, and then it becomes the comparison, hey, I want to play on this team. I want to be as highly ranked on this team as I can and play all the events. I think I just started to look way too outward of like, hey, compare myself to others instead of like, the only thing I can control is my game and my improvement and my practice. And I just got away from that. And I really think it culminated in, missing travel team junior year. And like I said, I think it ended up being the best thing for me because I do believe like one of the worst places you can be is like in the middle ground where you're mediocre and you're just not prone to change and you're just going through the motions. Like when you hit a rock bottom like that, it like A, you're gonna either quit or B, like you are going to find solutions. Like you're gonna be in a problem solving mode where you're gonna take really deep looks inside and be like, hey, what needs to fix? Because we have to do something different than what's going on right now. And that's kind of what happened to me is like, okay, like I was this really high recruit and like I should be playing on this team and be better than this. Like, what is happening? Like, I'm better than this. And I end up having a huge improvement, not only like in my physical game, but that was a time. I guess we can, this will be an easy transition for stats maybe, but in a few, I was really able to lean into like the statistics of golf and strategy of how to play. We had Decade as a team that year because this was all pretty brand new. This is 2016. And so we had the system we used, put in the stats with Scott Fawcett but I had never gone through like really been taught the videos and the process of actually how to play and use his system. And, I literally, when I missed postseason, I remember going in my dorm room and just watching like 10 hours of content like every day. I'm just watching all these videos in dark room. Went zero dark 30 and just watched all these videos. And it was definitely a light bulb moment of like, man, maybe I'm just like theorizing the game incorrectly. Like I am, for a better lack of word, like kind of playing like an idiot. Like I'm not, there's a better, easier way to play golf than what I'm doing. I'm not maximizing my talent. And so not only did I physically get better that summer with a few like adjustments in my swing, but I also just, played more smart, strategic golf, definitely partly with Decade. And I just saw a lot of the results. I went from, again, not playing to I won, what was that, the Azalea
Mhm.
amateur, which I can't like fully, at that towards, you know, course strategy because I think I was still learning at that point. This was like a few weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks after I had been told I'm not going to play on the travel team. But then, as the summer went on and I started to get a better grasp of it, that's when I've had like, I came in second, I want to say at the Porter Cup. I came in second at somewhere else.
Monroe.
Oh, the Monroe. Yeah. And then I want to say I had like a third at Terracotta and made it the semis or the quarterfinals of the North South. So I had like five of my six tournaments. I was like in the top five or one or contended.
Well, that's obviously a great, I don't know, improvement, obviously. But the other thing that strikes me is, and that I think young kids should listen to, they always just want to make the travel squad. When, I always tell them, don't just want to make the team better, and you do that by trying to be the best you can be. Don't worry about little Jimmy over there. He has nothing to do with your good golf or bad golf. But also that you took it on yourself. You didn't look outwardly and blame everybody else. Maybe at the time you were a little upset or bitter or whatever, but you did something about it. How mad are you? Are you mad enough to do something about it? Yes, you were. And your senior year after that great summer was pretty impressive. You had your lowest stroke average, 71.8. You won the General Hackler. You were on the All ACC team, and that was all things you hadn't done before in college. But then also um, at the ACC championship, you were in the last group. Now you didn't win the ACC. You didn't even play as well as you did the year before, but I will say this: you made a putt on the 18th hole to clinch the title. Talk about how that must have been the culmination of a lot because you the year before you were sitting at home.
Correct. Yeah, that was a cool moment, not only for me, but for the team and just kind of closing out our history at ACC championships, which was crazy historic, for those, I guess I could say 5 years. Because my gray shirt year, the team won ACCs as well. I wasn't eligible to play, and I wanted to play on that team anyways. It was crazy.
Mhm.
They had an incredible team that year, but they won the ring as well. So I actually have three ACC title rings, which is not a lot of people can say that when most people go to college for 4 years. Um, but yeah, that was just a cool moment. I really like when I freshman year, I felt like I kind of lucked into that birdie. I had some loose swings but I had a really good attitude. Senior year, it was the same hole. So, I mean, yeah, it was proper golf that hole. I hit a beautiful drive. Hit a really good 8 iron to, 25, 30 feet, just the shot that was called for. And then, a pretty easy two putt from 30 feet to seal it. So it was a cool moment and a nice way to cap that off, really.
Absolutely. And you mentioned this, that would be a good segue. What you did was started playing the game smarter, but that is a segue to what I really also want to talk to you about here. You turned professional in 2018, and you must have done something with statistics, strokes gained, something. So what I want to do right now with the rest of this is you admittedly said that you had a nerdy obsession with strokes gained, anything around strokes gained. I did too for a while, but I also realized I didn't know what I was doing. So I didn't know how to use them. I didn't know how to help my players use them. And I probably still fall short in that area today. So I'm getting ready to learn a lot myself personally. Talk about strokes gained. Obviously, Mark Brody created this that did revolutionize golf, at least the way we look at golf, the way we teach golf, the way we quantify golf, all of that. But your family has a company called courseofaction.com. I've signed up for it. I'm going to learn more myself. But talk about strokes gain, golf strategy, all of that, and how it has affected your professional life.
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, my parents started this company, more specifically my mom, about 10, 12 years ago. And she focused on like tournament scheduling for junior players and how to get more, noticed for recruiting and college purposes. And, I enjoy that as well, but I have more of a passion for just statistics and core strategy and all those decade principles that I use myself. And I guess going back to professional, I was just really able to use a lot of these stats as a great measurement to find out like, hey, what makes me really good? And if I'm going to have success in the pro ranks, like what is my recipe for doing that? Like I need to know exactly like how I'm going to play my best golf. And I was really able to see like I was much better iron player than I was giving myself credit for. And I think a lot of the times you can see with stats is that you have this image in your head of that you're a certain type of player or you may have a certain weakness, and it turns out you just don't. And I think it helped me a lot with figuring out how to best use my time when I practice. How am I going to maximize my, you know, skill, my scoring ability with a certain amount of time that anyone has to practice. So really, I think combining that with a lot of decade principles is really huge to determine like, hey, if I'm not scoring well in a certain area, like why is that? Because a lot of times I see it's more of a way you're viewing the game versus a pure physical lack of ability. And for example, like front pins, like a lot of people struggle with front pins because they don't know exactly how far they hit it and they don't realize that people come up short to front pins significantly more than you would ever think. And then when you come up short to these front pins, then you're now kind of short-sighted. And so things like that and really understanding like shot patterns and whatnot are I think are critical to playing really good golf, as well as understanding that you don't need to like play, I shouldn't say perfect golf, but even play like fire on all cylinders to play great golf. Like truly you can, if you, the more you understand your game and shot patterns, like you can almost work the system because golf at the end of the day is a game. And I see a lot of people focusing on like, how do I just have the perfect swing and hit exactly where I'm looking? And you can beat a lot of people by just playing smarter than they are.
You know, you bring up a point that reminded me. David Edwards, who won 4 times on the PGA Tour, he's an Oklahoma State golfer. He was an NCAA champion. He lived in Stillwater, so I would have him come and talk to the guys often when we were there. And one of the things he said was, and this is way before computers and stats and apps and all this is way before that. And one of the guys said, how have you been able to do it? He said, or how do you do it when you're playing badly? And he said, well, my my shot pattern. I don't think he used the term shot pattern, but my shot dispersion is much larger when I'm not playing well. And so I adjust my strategy to reflect that. And I understood it, but the players had no idea. They thought that was a negative thing. You know, you're admitting that you're hitting it bad. Well, yeah, I am. So talk to that. I mean, why do you think David was well ahead of his time, way before computers or strokes gained? I think he had a pretty good point.
Yeah, no, that is a great point. And actually, I played a qualifier for a Corn Ferry event in Knoxville last month, and I was hitting the poles. I consistently hit about 5 to 8 yard poles. I wasn't super happy with my golf swing, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't still put a good round together. And so I really think, uh, you know, a, something that I didn't use in even in college as much was centering my shot pattern, which is like if I hit 100 balls at, let's say, the 150 stick, like I want 50 of them left, I want 50 of them right. But that might mean I have to aim like 3 or 4 yards right of that 150 pull in order to do that. So it doesn't mean I'm just going to sit there and then just hit 70% of my shots left, because I'm going to miss a lot more greens. If there's a lot of pins on the right that day, well, then I'm waving the white flag. It's not going to be my day. So, that specific qualifier, again, I was hitting a lot of 5 to 8 yard poles. And what I would do to counteract that is like, well, if I can do something consistently, I can play good golf. It's when
Mm.
you start having two-way misses, then we have some issues. But literally what I did was just like, okay, I'm accepting this. I'm not going to try to change my swing mid-round. I am just going to play for it. I just started aiming, like I had my, decade target, let's say 5 yards right of this pin from 160. I was aiming another, 4 or 5 yards right of that with my body lines and just committing to the same shot and just bringing that pull back into good spots. I shot 65 and truly just didn't hit a lot of very good shots, you know?
Well, I mean, then that can't be about the physicality or the technique or any of that. That has to be almost 100% your approach to playing the game at that point in time. Has to be.
100%. Yeah. Like there is a way to make this game easier without saying, oh, well, I just didn't hit it where I was looking today. So I shot 75 and, it wasn't my day. It's just, again, golf is a game. And, the more you understand how to play it and understand your shot patterns and probabilities and expectations, like it's just about making the right decision and committing to it over and over again.
So you said expectations. So you're struggling with your game. You're not hitting the shots where you want to. Why is it okay to lower your expectations in that point? I mean, at that moment in time, you're a professional golfer. You're not always hitting it well. So,
Yeah, because listen, like every week is really important. Like obviously I played 3 years on the Corn Ferry and you're just not going to have it every week. So the weeks that, you're just, it feels a little off, you're going to have to grind out and make cuts because every point matters, every cut matters. And you just can't expect, hey, these are the 3 or 4 weeks I'm just going to fire in every cylinder for you to then put it together. Like you need to be able to have the right mindset and be able to play like truly good strategic golf and try to get every ounce out of your game, whether you're striping it or you're struggling. Like it's just a mindset you need to have every time because golf's hard, you
are you
know.
playing well right now?
I am playing well. Yeah, I've had I feel like I've had a lot of good results and with starting this business, I haven't had as much time to practice and play, but it's kind of been a challenge for me to really practice on what I think matters and be able to really bank on the knowledge of how to play the game versus like I don't have 7, 8 hours to go practice as much as I used to. So it's been kind of a fun challenge, and honestly, I'm playing really good golf, definitely better than the last probably year and a half or two. So it's been kind of fun.
That's a good positive thing to hear. What do you think are the most common mistakes made by players, by coaches, relative to evaluating strokes gain stats or any statistical data? Where do we make our biggest mistakes? Where do you think we make our biggest mistakes?
That's a good question. I feel like, hmm, I would say first of all, like strokes gain approach can be a place that's hard to determine. I think when you think of, I don't track proximity as much as the amount of greens that I hit, just because when you think of even like a lot of these qualifier courses, they're set up easier than a Corn Ferry. They're often a lot softer. So your proximity can get slightly skewed to where like, oh wow, I'm hitting it better than a tour pro right now from 120 yards because I'm hitting these shots to, you know, 12, 13 feet. And, that's better than tour average. Whereas like a lot of times you see on tour, like they're aiming 14, 15 feet away from the hole and they're hitting it pretty close to where they're looking because of the severity of the miss and how firm the greens are and a lot of the factors. So I think there's a lot of interpretation you have to do with data, which is, from a player's perspective, I can point that out pretty easily, or else you start reading a little into like the wrong things. Whether it's like, hey, think I'm doing really good at this, or on the contrary side, well, I'm not, like I said before, I'm not very good at chipping or whatever. It's like, well, maybe you're just giving yourself incredibly hard up and downs.
Mm-hmm.
That's another stat where it's like, I don't have a strokes gain. Like, how hard was this chip shot? It's just, it's how close did you get it or did you get up and down? And there's usually a story behind that. And so I would say, I guess to answer your other question, some of the lowest hanging fruit is either punching out of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Like a stat I really like is, from 100 yards, if a tour player is like kind of blocked from the trees or has tree trouble, their shot expectancy is like 3.8, which is they're making bogey about 80% of the time from
Yep.
100 yards. I mean, these are the best players on the planet. And so when you see like junior players or high school players try these unbelievable, miraculous shots out of the trees to try to hit the green, it's just like, oh my gosh, like, just punching it out is going to gain you like point 0.4, point 0.5 shots. And really our goal is to try to accumulate all these like tenths of shots, and you're going to make up a lot of strokes on your competition. And that's the thing about like the trees going back, like even if you pull off this miraculous shot, and I see it all the time. I play with guys on mini tours now. They're like, I'm just thinking, what are you trying to accomplish here? Because even if you get it by the green, like we know scrambling's a statistic. It's like 60-ish% on PGA Tour is pretty average. And so even if I pulled this off, I still only have a 60, 50, 60, 70% chance of getting this up and down versus if I chip it out to 100 yards, I'm giving myself a reasonable look. If I hit this thing to 10, 12 feet, I can still give myself a 30% chance of making par from there. But, it's the downside is this when you start giving away hole shots, those are really hard to make up versus, hey, I just lost point 0.3 here, point 0.4 because I hit in the trees. But then you go from the trees and you leave it in the trees, or you go in the trees and you hit into the hazard. Now you're just giving up like 1.4, 1.5, and those are very hard to get back.
Think there's a residual effect when you make one of those miracle shots that you try and it brings a double bogey. You lost something there for sure because you made a bad play. But I think it's that stroke or two plus because there's angst, there's stress, there's you start doing other things. We can't measure that in strokes gain, but it's there. And you said my dad used to always say, son, when you get out of position, just get back in position. That's the number one rule. He didn't have any data to tell me why that was the case, but you just gave a perfect example of why. Tour players do it, and that's why they're better than we are because they get back in position.
Yeah, no, they really do. And surprisingly, sometimes they don't. Like I did a video on Colin Morikawa on my Instagram, and I was shocked to see that because he's a very tactical player, very smart. I played with him before, but he hit a shot at PGA, was a PGA Championship at Quail Hollow on 18. Hitting it right there off the tee is jail. You just can't do it, and you can't spin the ball in the rough. So he wasn't gonna be able to slice it. He had roughly 200 yards, and instead of just punching out to 130 yards, advancing at 60 yards into the fairway and giving himself a shot at par, he tries to hit this low slicing, looks like a long iron. And my point was like, even if he pulled off this miracle slice and got it up 50 yards short of the green, he was only going to gain point 0.2 shots, point 0.2. But
Hmm.
he risked an entire shot for
Hmm.
that. Like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, but I think even the best players in the world, and he's one of them, can
Mhm.
make an emotional decision like that. And I think when Scott Foster
100%.
came up with Decade, it was because he was so emotional as a player. He had to create something that would take emotions out of it, for sure.
100, yeah, 100%. I agree. I think the more you can rationalize golf, for me, like the more I can rationalize golf with math and probabilities, the more I go, okay, this is just a good decision. I'm going to make a decision where I have a 60% chance of success rate instead of a 40. I can rationalize that. Like I'm not going to get upset if that 60% doesn't work out. I made the best decision. It just didn't work out for me.
So have you've been using stats basically for 7 or 8 years now, pretty much, right?
Pretty much. Yeah, I guess since 20, well, I guess a little longer than that. 2016
Or
was,
9 years, 9 years.
yeah.
So, my assistant coach, Ryan Murphy, and I, we talk about it all the time. Some kids will say, now we're going to play two tournaments in a row. We'll play one at Olympia Fields, which is a really tough driving golf course. It's tough to hit fairways up there. And then we play at Trinity Forest in Dallas, which is about as easy to hit fairways as a golf course could be, especially in the fall when the wind doesn't blow. And a kid will say, look how much my driving strokes gained improved in 1 week. Now, that's a perfect example of what Ryan Murphy and I think is I really don't care necessarily in small little bits and pieces of stats. I'd love to have trends over time with a lot of data. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think trends are important, especially because of examples like that, playing at a place where it's very tight fairways versus wide open. You can have some variance in the data that can skew kind of your perception of how you're playing. Uh, but I think as a general rule of thumb, I think it is a really important to be able to track and monitor, like here is where I'm at right now and how should I practice this certain part of my game. And that's why I think combining the strokes gain with like a lot of the decade principles is huge because those apply to any course anywhere. Your mindset and how you approach the game is going to travel no matter if the fairways are 20 yards wide or 60.
So when I first showed Scott's decade system to Jimmy Walker, Jimmy was like ranked fifth in the world at the time, and Scott's system was very young, so it was not fully developed and not worked out completely. But I showed it to him, and he read it for about 5 minutes, and he asked me a couple of questions, and then I said, "So what do you think of that?" And he says, "Well, that's just the way we play when we play well. When we're doing it the right way, this is the way we play golf." And he had never seen Decade or any of that, never been exposed to it. This is 2014 or 15. And so I think it's obviously got some value, amazing value, honestly. But I'm going to ask a couple other questions here related to this because I'm very interested in learning. Our players that don't see true value in keeping statistics and going over them and monitoring them, um, are pretty lazy with their data entry and they're not very accurate. What would you say to those kids if you were coaching them?
I would try to instill the importance of that information because you want people to want to put that in. So I guess if they don't want to, then again, you can't force and maybe just
Yeah.
you know, don't have them put it in like, hey, don't waste your time. But I think I would implore that, listen, if you want to play golf at a very high level and play professionally, like these are the numbers and the systems that you are going to want to use, or you're going to regret not using in a few years when it ends up costing you money because, um, you're not optimizing your full potential. Like, there's a reason why a lot of the best trainers of any other sport, you look at NBA, NFL, like they have so much data when it comes to what they're eating, how they're sleeping, uh, their hydration, like, they're monitored immensely because these are billion-dollar corporations and they need like results. So, data is only going to become more prevalent in society and in sports. It's not going to become less.
Yeah. So it's even more important than ever if you want to get something out of it to do it correctly. Input, output, they're about the same. Whatever you put trash in, it's coming out trash. You got nothing you can do to help yourself out. So I'm I'm probably going to have my guys listen to this fall just to remind them it's really really important that or don't do it at all. It's a
Right.
waste of your time if you're not going to put it in accurately. It's really really important. Um,
But I would
is
say as well to that, sorry, is
Yep,
like
go.
there's so much talent right now. Like I can confidently say like the junior players that are playing now are more talented than when I like you recruiting my class, back in 2010, 2011. Like
Mhm.
there's just so much talent out there. And like think about how you're going to separate yourself. It's going to be through these little things because these kids are hitting it so much further now. Like the force plate technology, like the instruction's better. So it's just like, how are you going to separate yourself? And it's going to be these little things like, you know, using your data correctly, understanding how to play the game correctly, whether it's, decade or not. But it's those are the little things that's going to separate the shot here or there. And then you multiply that by the four college players you're playing. Like
Mm.
it makes a huge difference.
It does make a huge difference. And I'm going to mention somebody you've probably run into, Johnny Kiefer on the Corn Ferry Tour. You may or may not have played with him yet. Have you seen Johnny?
I have, yeah, I know he's killing it, but I haven't played with him.
Okay. Well, Johnny did not pay attention to his sleep for the first 3 years, basically. He played 5 years here um, because of COVID. And he really didn't. And he told me literally the last year and a half that he was at Baylor, he tried and made every effort to get 1 hour of sleep a night more. It was his goal, and he probably didn't always do it, and it doesn't guarantee you're going to play better, but it was some small little detail that he thought was going to add up to something bigger, and that's just one thing he's done. He's become a great wedge player. He's a tremendous putter. He hits at 330 on pretty much a line, so but Johnny started taking care of little details. Statistics are no different than getting an hour extra of sleep. It's one extra thing you can do that will actually benefit you. I I just I there the margins for error are so slim nowadays.
They
I
really
mean,
are. There's so much talent in college, let alone the pro level.
it's crazy. But going on a little further here, you've had a bogey-free 72 hole tournament on the Corn Ferry Tour. What year was that at Utah?
That was 2023, the Utah. I think it's called the Zion Bank Championship, that Cornford ran out there. And yeah, that was a really cool memory, a great week. Obviously, from a golf nerd perspective, pitched the perfect game. No bogeys for 72 holes, which takes a ton of obviously really good strategy, a ton of discipline, a little bit of luck, but you mix it all together and then, you know, something crazy can happen like that.
It doesn't happen very often. There's only a handful of on the Corn Ferry Tour that have even ever happened. Doesn't happen very often on the PGA Tour either, 72 holes. But uh, so understanding statistics better and how you play the game and how you approach the game. Do you think it's about making more birdies, or do you think it's about bogey avoidance? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. It's bogey avoidance. It's so much easier to clean up mistakes than it is to tell someone, "Hey, you got to hit more six irons to 15 feet." And so like, okay, cool. Like, good luck with that. But it's a lot easier to say, "Hey, here's how we're not going to make bogeys from 150 yards and not make bogeys on par fives, which are holes that will kill you if you make bogeys. Here's how you should think about lag putts." Putts from 20 feet. If you're never leaving putts short from 20 feet, I can guarantee you're three putting way too many of them. So stuff like that is like there's so many different ways to get people to think about how not to make bogeys, and eventually you're going to like luck into birdies. It's like playing away from bogey, you're actually going to make more birdies than if you just said, "Hey, I'm trying to make more birdies."
Yeah, I guess that's a concept that's relatively new to be conscious of that concept, but still a lot of kids don't understand it. And they also don't understand an even more simple concept. The guy who shoots 79 on average and the guy who shoots 95 on average make one birdie's difference, just one. One of them makes maybe one birdie or not, and the other doesn't make a birdie. It's like that's an extreme example because the 95 shooter is not good at all. But you don't make more birdies. Uh, in the I will tell you in the spring of 24 when Johnny had his best semester, he wasn't making more birdies. He was making a whole lot less bogeys because he was a better wedge player and a better putter, and maybe his strategy was even better. But I don't know if I'm going to play pro golf nowadays, and I'm looking at this Corn Ferry event. There's about 40 guys within 3 shots. It's like, what does a bogey do to you during a week?
Yeah, exactly. You're losing a lot of money and 30 places on the leaderboard. But yeah, if you look at Scotty, I mean, his bogey avoidance is incredible. I think he's crushing the tour right now, and you just watch him play, and he hits just so many proper golf shots on the right side of the green. It's nothing. Obviously, he hits a ton of great wedge shots close, but if you look at him just hit a bunch of 9 iron to 7 iron, it's like, all right, he is between 15 to 23 feet like all day long, and you just rarely see him airmail greens, or he's not going to beat himself. So if you're gonna have to go beat that guy because it comes
And
down to how many 15 footers he makes.
absolutely. And he's not forcing himself into short sides almost ever. And if he does, he's smart enough to know that the putt is going to be the hero shot, not this lob shot. But I look at Tiger Woods' last two victories, Augusta in 2019 and Zozo later that year in 2019. It was a textbook example of what looked like boring golf. He just wore people out because he wasn't making mistakes and he avoided bogeys. Do you remember those two events watching them on television?
I do, yeah. I mean, it's great. The Masters where everyone else was falling apart and Tiger was just hitting his shots to 25 feet and taking birdies when they came to him, and everyone else was in Race Creek and falling apart on 15 like Molinari, and truly that was just like everyone else is going to fall apart and I'm just going to outlast everyone, which is I really think a lot of the great players do well in major championships because they are better at not making bogeys and making critical mistakes physically and mentally than other players, and it just like it weeds out people even more, so it's just easier to win those if you're an elite player.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is going to be an odd question. You're a stats guy. You use them to help yourself improve. Do we have a strokes gained attitude stat yet?
That's a good question. I guess going back to decade, but he's got that Dr. Larden scorecard, which is I think is a really good way to track mistakes. I mean, I think you can either track um every time you make like a one of those Tiger Five mistakes, which is, like bogeying inside a 150 or a par five, like the odds are you definitely had some kind of mental mistake there. So you can either track it that way, or I'll tell some students to track it through the Dr. Larden scorecard, which is a great way to look back at how was your discipline, where was my mindset. But honestly, the thing I love doing is I think not a lot of people talk about enough is tracking and practicing your pre-shot routine. I truly think like your pre-shot routine is like a window into the golfer's mind. Like, you know, I've I watched Scott's video about Tiger in the 2000 US Open, and truly one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in golf, period. And it had nothing to do with the score. It was the fact that from the moment of walking into the shot to the moment of impact, he was like 12.5 or 12.8 seconds every single time.
Mhm. It
And
was
it
within a
does
minuscule, tiny fraction of a second. All
mhm,
of them were within that. It was amazing.
all within that. And it's just incredible because it's like there's no way you can have other thoughts other than like obviously decade didn't exist back then, but like here was his target, here was his plan for the shot, here's how I'm going to execute it. And he was like on repeat for the basically the entire tournament. And then you contrast that to I'm probably gonna do a video on it because it's very fascinating. Like to Rory at the US Open last year at Pioneers. Because I mean I played that tournament, and just watching him at the beginning of the round, his routine, the amount of looks he would take at the target, it all looked athletic and flow. It was like 4 looks and go for like every single shot. The moment he makes the putt on 12 to tie Bryson and heads off to the 13th hole, his free shot routine completely flipped. He took like twice as long. He started taking 12 looks at the target instead of four, standing over the ball. And in my mind, it's like, what is going on in his head? It's, hey, I'm about to win the US Open. My drought's about to end. The media's going to get off my back. Like that extra 10, 12 seconds he takes is I can promise you it's not about the process of the shot.
Hmm.
And so tracking your routine and practicing your routine is one of the best way to A, like enact the discipline that it takes to hit these targets. But B is like it's such a great way of when your routine is off, be like, hey, something's wrong. Like, what am I thinking about that's not productive right now?
And it also didn't involve the technique of a golf swing. You mentioned Rory. He is the player of a generation. I mean, he's been the guy for 15 years. He truly has. And even he was susceptible to that when pressure came. Even he would get out of his routine. And the first time I ever even thought about this, Mike Holder, I was working my first year as an assistant coach in 1997, and we were at a tournament, and he was just walking along, and he was kind of, I don't know if he was trying to coach me up on how to coach or how to see things or whatever. And we had a player on the team, great player, he was an All-American, and the kid took one extra look on a pre-shot, and he said, uh-oh. And then the ball went someplace crazy. And I said, how did you know that was going to happen? He said, he never takes 4 looks or 3 looks. He never takes it. And it was like, wow, Mike Holder was ahead of his time. He understood how important the pre-shot routine was. And but anyway, I think that's great. So strokes gained attitude, we haven't really quantified it, but we're trying, right?
We're trying. Yeah.
So you are playing professional golf. It's what you dreamed of since you were a young boy, right?
Correct.
What would you say to young kids right now, your best piece of advice for a 12, 13, 14-year-old that wants to be where you are someday?
Man, I think A, you have to love it. I think you have to I feel like I see a lot of parents either force the love or force practice, and it's just like you need to have that just true passion to play in order to eventually be great, which is what you need to make it out there. And again, I think everything that my company is trying to do in terms of tracking information to be able to practice more efficiently and whether it's decade principles to play smarter golf, like that's everything I wish I knew when I was younger. So that's kind of what I'm trying to teach people is like the game doesn't have to be as hard as you're making it. Like be as efficient as you possibly can and let variance take over. Like you may
Mhm.
not have it all the time, but you can squeeze as much you can squeeze as much out of a round as possible every time. And some of your lemons may be good, some may be bad, but I think truly understanding the math and how to best play the actual game of golf is so important when you see so many people just hitting balls on the range relentlessly, and it's like you're actually not getting better.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's every coach needs to hear that, but every player who's playing for a coach needs to hear that. So before I'm going to ask you one more question. Before we do, again, how could people find out your family's company about this information about stats and strategy? How would they get there?
Yeah, you can just visit courseofactiongolf.com. Also on Instagram, but easiest is my website and yeah, working with kids, speaking with a few colleges, but yeah, I have just a huge passion with working with kids and their statistics and just seeing how they can get better and use their time more efficiently.
When you work with somebody like that who's a high achiever that wants to be great, wants to be better, and you're teaching them to be more efficient, does that accentuate what you're doing? Does it help rubber stamp it for you for yourself and your playing career?
Oh, absolutely, because I got to practice what I preach. So it definitely helps me be on top of it, be diligent, and you know, walk the walk, you could say.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's good for me and obviously for other players as well. But have a deep passion for it because I know it works.
Absolutely. Well, one other question. Where are you playing next? What's the rest of the year look like for you, Chris?
Yeah, actually going up to Canada tomorrow for the Americas qualifier. I'm gonna do Q school up there. Hopefully that goes well. And then I play some events up in Canada this summer. But I guess the main thing is Q school in the fall. Actually, just got into the Cara Open, which is a great tournament. I really enjoy playing that one. But yeah, I got Q school in the fall and hoping to get my status back on Corn Ferry as well as do this on the side. So all exciting things.
That's great. Well, best of luck to you. Thanks for shedding some light on a subject a lot of people talk about a lot of time, but all the time, but a lot of people don't know much about how to handle it. So you did a great job there, and I appreciate it, and I'll be looking forward to watching the results as you finish the year out.
Yeah, Coach, appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me on, and yeah, best luck to your program.
All right. Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.